Showed it to me too.
And because he's the light older you know, and the concert
I was gonna try
he
it.
literally looks like that. But his confidence get better.
You gotta remember it's all.
He's on steroids and everything else. From
Yeah,
well, it's that or cancer, so we're starting with this. We're hoping it's this. He's on a bunch of steroids.
How old is he?
7.5. He's on steroids and antibiotics and cough syrup.
I gotta wait for Haley.
Whatever's fine.
Still has.
Cookies.
I don't mind. Y'all get up there later and get Robert.
I mean, fruit.
Vegetables.
Here.
Robert.
I know.
Did you read about the
Kill me?
Yeah, when you.
But that was the guy that spoke at the last conference. I went to.
Well, just
Good speaker. Follow him on like.
from looking at this and then.
Oh, I can't
He
figure
tweets.
Twitter out.
I like Twitter.
He
Do you? I can't
Instagrams,
figure it out.
but he got some good
I
stuff.
like
And he's got a
Instagram.
blog.
I love Instagram.
That's way above my pay grade, but I can handle Twitter.
Do you hear how many things I've learned from Instagram?
Hey, I'm be scared to know.
Good things. There's all these
okay,
taekwondo people and healthy eating people and
What's this fella's name? Let's investigate him.
he was last on Andrew 10.
I kept thinking it said Mariota, and I was thinking of the
He's got
Oregon.
26 minutes.
Y'all can tell where my head is.
I reminded him again today.
I'm just kind of curious why we didn't get called for conferences like kids.
We had recently talked to you guys.
Oh,
Because we, yeah, it was well, 2 weeks.
We had quite a few conferences with like 4 or 5 of us.
That's where he's at right now.
Is he there now?
Right now, he wasn't
He's
really
there.
before.
We can have to go. We can go.
Did you want to read this?
No, I was just kind of his name, so I didn't call him on Twitter.
I didn't hear.
But yeah, I wanna read it.
You said- you said-
Yeah, I wanna read. You can read it first. I'm in the middle of reading a different one.
Help again.
What's he doing? I asked him the other day.
What kind of
You go
survey?
first and you tell me if you
Let's
agree.
get one. I'm so irritated.
I'm not like I can't read more than one at a time.
They didn't even pull it.
If you want to sit right there, you
I
can.
looked at the one in February.
By sound, no one's there.
Oh,
man.
There you go.
Same.
Okay.
Yep, all over the back.
Thank you.
Have that over
Hector, there's food over there too. Plenty, if you want anything. And drinks in the fridge.
And then the rest of the itinerary is on the front. All right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, of course, absolutely. Anytime we can get this. We'll-
Can hear you.
Thank you.
But we are leaving early.
Okay,
Let's do that, Robert, you're gonna leave some of the questions. I'll be there by
He
5.
has 11 followers.
All right.
Let's just get started on it.
Of course. Nice seeing you.
I'm gonna call him and see if he's calling me back. He looks like he's desperate for people.
Yes, I had that one last time. There's, I thought it was good. This one is a Chipotle one. I like it.
My salad's good, thank you.
So good.
My allotted fruit.
I check every expiration
Yeah.
date and got the dates. That kind of grosses me out.
Which corn biscuits is supposed to be like. They gave him the option there, like you can keep playing, you can't hurt my orders. He said, no, I want to do it now, so we have a full baseball season. He chose baseball over basketball, which surprised me.
That's right.
Oh, well. Very good about baseball. Baseball is.
Yeah, I knew you'd be happy.
Well,
Dan's gonna be a little bit late, so we might as well go ahead and get started, if that works for everybody. I think the main reason we wanted that work session with the administrators was to check in, we talked about a site council-esque committee, and then most of the schools said they're already working on site councils, and so we wanted to check in on that. And then also, I think just kind of a sounding board to see how things are going in the schools, what they might be forward, but anything else you can think of?
What's just really general discussion, questions you might have that.
And we want to start off with site council stuff. How's that going?
I'll start. So I
reached out and got a couple of parents that would be willing to be on. But right now, I don't have any staff members that really jumped out and volunteered to be a part of it. So, and that's obviously a huge part of it. So I mentioned it at a staff meeting and asked them, just let me know if you're able and willing to do this. So that's it.
Probably wants another meeting.
Well, and that's just it. And then also like the parents that I asked, same thing, they're like, when do you think? And I said, well, we could work with your schedule, but that's what's difficult, because obviously with Slater, they have little kids and so, and I was hoping for a couple of classroom teachers for sure, upper elementary and primary, especially if curriculum gets discussed or anything like that, so that it's good, solid input. And then I asked for a para, because I just read through what components you needed for the site council. So mine's kind of at a standstill. But I can keep trying for sure.
We have our first meeting next Monday at 3:45. We'll have a couple parents, so hopefully I'm gonna get a couple more. We do have, obviously myself and Ms. Foley, and then we have 3 certified and 2 classified. So we may only get 2 teachers, our librarian, and 2 of our classified people will be on it. So we have 7 of the staff members who we represent from our, we have Kelly Nichols, who does our, you guys on any mental stuff. And we also have a para that has shown some interest, that's gonna talk to me tomorrow, and let me know if she wants to be on it or not. I'd love to have a para on it, just to get their stand, their view. And then we have 2 of our classroom teachers. So we'll start next Monday completely out of clean slate and just ask everybody that's involved in that group what they want to look at to improve in our school, and kind of get a foundation based from that. And then obviously based on whatever you guys kind of point out that you want to see improvements to. So but I am interested, when you ask people to be on a committee like this, it's really important that first meeting to get their input on what they want to be involved in that. So I think that first meeting will do a lot of just that, just a lot of conversation.
It's similar difficulty getting the kind of staff to volunteer for that too.
Oh, yeah, no. I say I've got my staff, like,
Yeah.
I feel bad for Steph, and I do, but I sent out emails, and I think, what was it, Aaron? I think it was probably, no, it was like maybe last Thursday.
How'd you find,
Last Wednesday or Thursday, I'd sent out finally an email, say, hey, last chance. And 2 of these teachers came to me and go, you're desperate, aren't you? And they said, we'll do it. So it was, just pushing, and the biggest thing is valuing their time in the parent section. We meet at 3:45, we're done at 4:45, whether we're done or not. So, but our goal obviously is to be done. But valuing that time, making sure we have good conversations, to make sure it's a good experience. And then, once you get something started like that, if it's a good experience, word gets out, people will jump on board. So it'll grow. It'll grow.
Did you express any expectations when you were fishing for people about how often they would have to meet?
Well, no, I said once a month. It'd be Monday, once a month, first Monday of the month. And then, but when we get together on that Monday, we'll all kind of talk and say, hey, if things come up and we get close to board meetings, or we get close to end of the semester, or we get close to end of the year, if we wanted to add an extra meeting, if they buy into what we're trying to accomplish, that wouldn't be difficult.
I was kind of thinking maybe less would be more if it's good going, and then if they get going on something, decide they need more, but did you say anything to your staff members?
No, I said it would I said we could try to even build it in within the day, like during the school day, like during their lunch or prep or something, to make it more, suitable for their schedule. I said if it was after hours, I would make it right and flex time, for them. And also it was, what are we gonna talk about too? And I was like, well, the number one thing that was brought up was like curriculum. So when we are, especially when you guys have taught the curriculum, then you can answer some of these questions, that kind of stuff. And so maybe I need to sell it better. I'll do that.
I would lowball it. I mean, if you say we're gonna try to meet twice during the school year, and then it snowballs into something else. And curriculum, I know is a concern of the boards,
Right.
but but that's a general concern. If they have an idea of what they'd like to see done with it, that would be a real opportunity, so for the staff. There's no need. Mr. Burns?
I guess I need to up my game. I did, well, no, I mean, being honest, I mean, I did put out to my staff about site council, but I've got a younger staff, so they're pretty involved with sports, and, you know, I've got at least 3 staff members right now that are coaches. I've got one that's really active in the mentor program. I'm trying to get that, keep that going, but I just need to start asking teachers again and reach out to some of those parents. So. Yeah.
Mrs. Bolton, I don't, with the unique situation that you have, I don't even know if they're required to have site councils, but it's such a unique situation.
Well, we don't have parents involved. I mean, that would be Mr. Smith. And his response is, whatever you want to do, Brandy. I want to be the queen up here, whatever you want to do, Brandy. So I meet every single day with every single student. At least once. I try to do it at least twice to specifically talk about grades, how school's going. I just call that making my rounds. I do it in the morning and in the afternoon. And then I'm over there when I'm not in meetings or something else, helping fill in as a teacher to support them. And oftentimes the things that they're working on, they have leadership groups within OIA. So I don't see site council being something that's going to take off.
Probably not necessary, you think? I just want to make sure Monroe doesn't feel left out, but it's just such a totally different situation.
In this situation, I'm fine being left out because it's like trying to run a race wearing swim flippers. It's not a good fit.
Yeah, it's all right. I guess for the other schools.
Make sure that's in the notes. Brenda.
I couldn't repeat that, so.
I think it's tough, and I think this year, after the last couple of years, probably makes it even more challenging. I guess maybe reach out to sounds like Mr. Medley's got at least something going, but I mean, I'd love all something just to get something started, not something that's not going to be too cumbersome for people, I guess. But
So as far as, can I ask, so you're going for once a month, I mean, and then looking at it, there's not like a, as far as implementing it, so you're saying it's okay if we just meet like once or twice a year just to start with?
I don't know what the ORS says. I'm looking that up right now, but it really doesn't, to me, that doesn't matter. It's the point of having that staff and community input. That's what we wanted anyway, before we even landed on specifically a site council. And so any kind of a group of staff and community members that could help research and direct things like curriculum, and not, we keep talking about that, but not just curriculum, the betterment of our schools, I guess.
Yeah,
And
there's
so
no,
if it's twice a year,
yeah, there's no time on, I can't see it here, as far as like how often you're supposed to meet, but.
Kind of the things that you guys looking for us to report back on after the meeting.
Just any concerns or, I mean, I think.
So nothing particular from you folks that you're concerned that you want our ability to work on, just you want our ability to figure out what we need to work on.
I think the original goal when we discussed it was also to help. Maybe, and now obviously, I guess if you can't get them volunteer, then apparently they don't care that much. But we wanted, you know, community members, parents and stuff to feel like they had some input and like their opinion and value. But if you can't get them to show up, then I guess apparently they don't care for it.
Or they're really happy.
Or they're super
They're
happy.
really happy. I would go with that,
I like that.
right? Well, and that could be like how I was vague on what we would talk about. You know what I mean? And even when I spoke to the parents, I was like, can you be a part of this, site council? Okay, well, what are we gonna look at? Well, we're gonna look at curriculum, we're gonna, look at what we need to do to be the best school that we can be. Okay, and that's exactly what I told the teachers as well.
Yeah.
So it was maybe just too vague.
But joking aside, I think most of the parents probably are fairly happy. Not everybody, but they're not.
No, for sure.
Being the best it can be, I think hits the nail on the head. I think some of the priorities for the board are improving performance, and we always talk about retention and things like that. And especially with some of these standards that are coming down the pike, standard changes in the state of Oregon, I think the community, and maybe the board too, I'll speak out of place, would feel more at ease if community representatives and staff representatives took a look at that curriculum and made sure it fit our schools. But I don't think we envisioned it being a big chore for the people participating on it. Maybe just different perspectives that could improve our schools.
And with the curriculum, that's part of the adoption process, is we do ask for public input, and we had it here. We did that with social studies, and we invited, come on in and check it out. English is this year, we should get the list of approved curriculum in February.
I mean, language arts.
Language arts. And yeah, and that will be something we'll ask again. So I asked each building to put together a team. And then their core team has to hang out with me a little bit and go through those curriculums and things like that, and look for what we like to pick. My hope is to have the ones that they don't choose also available if the public wants to see those as well. And so that's, I'm partly done with my salad. And so that's kind of part of that process as well. So they'll have a chance to look at what we adopt. Again, I can't speak to the older programs, as that was a process that Mr. Jones went through, although I'm certain he had community input available as well. But even this time, we had one posting on Facebook asking if, something was in there, and we responded in an email to that individual, and it's kind of great. The other thing we're starting to do is house our curriculum here, is I've started to put together a curriculum library of all of our updated textbooks. Come in, well, let's look at what your kid's learning, and I'll show you the kid's copy of, nothing we're doing is secretive. And again, we want to be open, and we want parents to say, yeah, that's, or how does the teacher do that? And let me go visit with the teacher and see, when we get to this particular unit, what does it look like? And I know, at Slater, they have one of the teachers, and she teaches about the war. Her family's from Germany, and it's just the neatest experience for the students to get to hear about these different cultures and ideas. She doesn't talk about death and destruction. She does it in a very classy way that, yeah, it's meeting the standards, but it's also enriching these students' history of how we became who we are today. And so again, just being in the classrooms, and the administrators all know that as well. I know that because my son was in that class. We want parents to know what we're doing and what we're teaching. I'm really hoping with language arts, we get a lot of parents involved, but I also know parents are busy. I don't take it personally. They're busy. And so that'll be, again, I'm hoping those teams will start forming in February, and any parent who wants to be on the team, we would more than welcome them to join our team to look at those books and walk through that process with them.
It might be a different setting for some of the conversations about professional growth and improvement for those schools. But when you have the different dynamic of staff members and community members, conversations might take place that don't normally, because I know as administrators, you're always talking to parents and community members, but when you have someone in that room with the staff and they start brainstorming, one of the things I thought of, especially in the middle and high school, that we were always concerned with attendance and the failing grades. And I don't know, maybe a parent will say, have you tried this? Maybe this would be more effective in improving attendance or failing grades. I think that is, or maybe staff and parents combined will identify an area where it can do some professional development, and then the site council could come to Mr. Quick or the board and say, we need to allocate some resources to improve our language arts, since now we have to have world languages and such. Does that answer your question, Mr. Burns, about the clear as day
Yeah, yeah.
expectation?
Here's mine. No, I get it.
Anything else about site councils?
I think that kind of covers it, like, we can't get it off the ground, I mean, I don't know how you encourage. people involved.
I think community is the key part. People are always saying, well, let us know if you're gonna take a look at those things. Staff already has so much on their plate, how you incentivize.
Well, and then here it says, it says if the school board determines that a school site is unable to fulfill the requirements of the section, or if the needs of a school site require a different composition, the school district board shall establish a 21st century council in a manner that best fits the educational needs of the district. So I don't know, maybe if we can get representatives from each, like teachers from each school, and and then maybe one administrator, designee, help head that up. I mean, I don't.
A district site council instead of a building site council.
Right. Because I mean, I looked at the CBA and I looked here, and so I don't know. I'm just brainstorming.
I had that thought, I'm glad you brought that up, because I had that thought and then it went away. Would it step on the toes of any of the schools if we had more of a district-wide approach to it?
And I'll give it a good college try. And again, talk to my staff and try to get our own school site council thing going. Because I mean, each school is going to be unique in what they're doing. So I can definitely give it a try.
I think it's more meaningful to have school to school, but I also, if we look at like as a community member and ask these parents to come, I think it's more, it works better for them if they are a parent that has a kid in every school. It's better to go attend one meeting, you know what I mean? Than to say, oh, no, I'll volunteer for Slater Site Council, but not middle school or high school, you know what I mean? So I see both positives to both.
But I'm also
of it.
thinking we're doing the same thing with Steve's leadership in that when we're doing the strategic planning, it's kind of like almost the same thing as this, is we're trying to set, like one of the goals from the site, what the strategic planning was building facilities. The other one is achievement of some sort of measure there. So it's like that almost in and of itself seems like it acts as a site council, but I don't know. Overstepping or just trying to brainstorm.
I agree. When we talked about it this summer, we kind of talked about all those things rolled into one. And then Mr. Quick got a hold, you guys are using that consultant, right? And kind of retouched on that. But I think it absolutely is serving the purpose that we wanted site council to do. And so if that just needs to evolve into something that needs, however often it's deemed appropriate, I think that meets our expectations. Not to undermine the whole site council you put together, Mr. Bennett, but
That's okay.
with that too.
If you have enough people involved, there's no problem doing multiple things. Just get people involved. Typically, I mean, it's harder, to get them involved as kids get older. Parents tend to be more involved the younger the kids are with certain things. But we can do a school one, a district one. But again, I think the key, like you said, is not meeting them to death. Having so many meetings and so many get-togethers and so many things. And potlucks are good, right?
Slater could sit on
I almost
it.
didn't come to that. You said you were gonna have snacks, so I said.
Right on. The good potluck on this. I even brought chocolate.
Potluck.
Dan, the administrators was kind of giving us a rundown on how the site council planning is coming. Some of the schools are having a hard time, especially recruiting staff members to be on it. And we talked about what our expectations are for these site councils, but also if there's a possibility that a district-wide council might be more appropriate or more feasible right now. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Are there thoughts that a district-wide one with more, I guess, representative of each school would be a better model than trying to get a bunch of little ones?
Well, middle school and the Slater seem to be having more difficulty getting volunteers. And you're talking about how often to meet. I guess at this point in time, one of the main things is we'd like people to discuss curriculum is, I guess you could have put your first meeting all the way back till February when she has the new language arts stuff. So you could say, one thing we know for sure that was going to be happening at this meeting is you'll be looking at the language arts curriculum. And then now that they have a specific, oh yeah, we know that's happening, you maybe could get more involvement.
And see what like with that though, we usually have like for us, we'll have both of our language arts teachers will be a part of that
Yeah.
process. selection process. So we've got those two, right? We have had parents come in and volunteer and go through the curriculum with us.
And we usually have a grade level rep from every grade level to be on like an adoption committee like that.
And then I also have a special education teacher. I generally don't have one from every building, although they're all invited.
And the English curriculum is always interesting because you have so many supplements in English. So it's not like you have a physical science book. I mean, they're gonna have 12 different books that they read that aren't based necessarily in a specific curriculum as much as they're based in the standards. So the English one's always fun.
And one of the things we're really looking strongly at is that writing piece as well. At least what we've found so far is, it's embedded in there, but it's not a super strong program. And so we may be looking at both the language arts book and a writing program that could marry together. We'll see what they come up with. The list isn't out yet.
Seems like maybe 2 birds with 1 stone could be killed if you did have the site council as group participate in that, and it might get more interest, especially sounds like staff members. There's certain staff members that are going to be involved in that. The community members that can be involved, that would knock out one meeting without having to have lots of extra ones and get more involvement if that's appropriate.
I think the more the better. And I think there's a lot of power in educating parents on what we're supposed to be teaching. What does that look like? What does a 5th grade standard of English look like compared to an 8th grade standard of English? And, again, I don't think parents know because they're parents, they're not teachers. We found that with our online program. Parents have no idea what their students should be learning. And so I think having a platform to provide that to parents, here's what you can expect, I think is super powerful.
I think it sounds like maybe give one more shot to see if individual schools can get a site council. If not, I think the board would feel comfortable if you guys, decided we need to do this as a district because individually we can't. That would be fine. Maybe that curriculum review would be a good task for them to participate in.
Could you give, if we were able to convene like a site council, that they can give them the super like hyper focused task of just focusing on language arts curriculum. So then you got my 2 teachers, then I get 2 parents, myself, a classified person. And then the one task right now, just going through language arts curriculum and helping us select something. Would that count as a site council, or are you looking for something that's more sustained?
I mean, the way I understand that kind of still falls into the same focus as a site council. And odds are when you get all those people together, they're gonna bring up anything else. They come together for that, but if there's other issues, they will be voiced. I would hope.
I think it would be too much to say we want a site council. We want you to look at everything, decide what we need to do with our facilities and decide what we should maybe do about a possible bond and look at this curriculum and decide how we can improve student performance. That's too much, especially for 1 year or for 1 meeting, especially if we're having a hard time getting people together. I'm kind of thinking a couple of meetings a year might be realistic.
And like you say, Mr. Burns, narrowing the focus so that they don't feel overwhelmed by the invitation, like, oh, okay, yeah, we're coming together to talk about this.
Right.
I have an amazing staff, so I'll have a meeting before the next board meeting. And I already have the
I thought you were gonna
parents.
tell us you're gonna have one before.
I was, you know what, I was, because you know how competitive I am, so I was, but I can't quite pull it off that quick.
Robert doesn't believe you could have anyways. So.
Tomorrow?
Hey, just do the best you
I will.
Anything else about the site council? What else do you guys have? At that August meeting, we talked about successes and challenges. I thought that was kind of a worthwhile conversation for each of the schools, since we got another half an hour.
I have some successes.
That's because your kids live there. I'm just kidding.
Hey, this is a big one though, because this is always a challenge, is finding somebody that can certify welders. I have 2 students they're about to test, and I have somebody coming down from Baker to certify them.
Cool.
That's it for me.
I want to know if it passed.
They're gonna,
Are they?
yeah. They already submitted a bunch of samples and
So like the program from Baker has like the whole metal bender and everything. That's awesome.
he travels around the state. COVID put it on hold for a while, but he's back in action now. And he said, just let him know when we have people ready. He said it didn't matter if it was 1 student or more than 1, and we have 2 right now and 1 more that's he's on the fence. By the time it happens, I think we'll have 3 that are gonna test. So, but they tested a couple today, samples, and I don't know the lingo, but it was 200 some odd pounds or tons of something or other, and it didn't bend, and the guy's happy with that. So
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's all that.
that's my success.
We are transforming our alt ed program. Building wise, we're one of the problems with alternative education in school settings is when you look at handbook, when you look at how students get themselves into alt ed, there's a lot of different ways to do that. One of the ways is through discipline issues, expulsions or whatever they may be. So to have that, I mean,
No,
to have that within your building and then have students wanting the halls, I mean, it's a difficult to have that separation. So what we're doing is our corner of the building where our teachers lounge is, and we have a small section of a library room because our library is transformed a little bit. We're turning that into our alt ed room. So students will come in and go out. They won't be in the building based on why they are in alt ed. What I mean by that is, first of all, our construction class is doing all the work except the plumbing. Gotta have a plumber do the plumbing. Then we're gonna put a bathroom down there because there's already plumbing and pipes and everything down there. Now, other than that, our construction class is gonna do the whole enclosure of it, and the walls and all that stuff. So that, which is gonna be great. But you have certain students that are in alt ed, again, behavior, attendance, they kind of work their way in there. Your other ones are in alt ed because something happened in their life. They moved here in a bad situation and they're just behind in credits. So the alt ed program allows them to get caught up. Those students will be allowed to be, to take our alt ed throughout the morning and then maybe in the afternoon take a welding or a wood shop class. Because they're in a different boat. They're in alt ed, not because they went to our school and have been placed in alt ed. They're in there based on some things that are completely out of their control, and to be able to allow them to take the other classes and kind of work through the building is a benefit. So that location is going to benefit us a whole lot, because right now it's smack dab in the middle of the school. And we have a couple students that are in that situation because of some choices that they made. And when they're, just in the mainstream in the hallways and all, it doesn't serve the purpose that it should serve in some students' lives. So we're getting ready to transform that. Mr. Reckenzone's already been underneath the building. He's already checked everything out. He's obviously a contractor. There's a couple of permit things to deal with, but we're excited about being able to kind of transform that part of the building into that. I know one of our options was going to be the modular that was there, but I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go into the modular that's there right now. TDCC EOU remodeled. I mean, they did a great job wherever they had to it. So they're up and running and they're really pushing some things on us, and I think that we're going to be able to work together with them. So, but that was out. So we were looking for the next possible suggestion, and that was some place where the students that are in certain situations can get in the building and out of the building without going through the hallways. So we're excited. We're hopefully that can happen for the second semester. But again, a lot of that comes on availability of plumbers or plumber. We have one plumber in town, I think, Not very many.
Two or three.
There's two.
We got two.
And then as there, our construction classes, the weather gets bad, they're looking for indoor projects, so that'll be a perfect project. Works out.
I'll do some sports, talk some sports.
Oh, yeah.
Great
We just finished up our fall sports season for the high school, which we had a great fall season. Our football team did well. I mean, they suffered with some injuries and colds and stuff throughout the whole season, so they finished well, though. I think they finished third in our little hybrid league, right? Third, but weren't able to weren't able to go on to the postseason. Our volleyball team did wonderfully. They took first at state this last weekend, which was pretty awesome. So they're repeat state champions. So that's exciting. And we're only losing 2 of our seniors. So that'll be good. The program's looking nice and healthy moving forward in the next couple of years. And then our cross country team was kind of a rebuild year, truthfully, with the loss of quite a few seniors. And then the COVID season with running is obviously that definitely hurt us just simply because they weren't doing their typical amount of miles. But they still finished 4th for the girls, 3rd for the boys. So that was really exciting for them. And we didn't even have a full boys team. So that was exciting. So they did well. So we've got a week off and we'll start winter sports come Monday. We've got a pile of boys basketball players, a decent amount of wrestlers planning to come out, and a decent amount of girls basketball players. Our girls basketball players, or team, I should say, is definitely going to be a rebuild year, but we've got a new coach, and so we're excited to see what he's going to be able to do. It should be good.
Okay, I'll go next. Attendance is really looking good at Slater for both students and staff. We were super lucky to be able to really think outside the box and cover for each other and move some specialists and things so that we could stay open while we have such a sub shortage. Because as you know, it's pretty important to have all hands on deck at an elementary school. So just kudos to everybody that helped and we were able to do that. But our overall attendance really is good at Slater for our students. Big thank you to Catherine Dover Spike, who has taken over and is our smart reader. We're probably one of the only schools that are going to have the readers actually come into the building. Most people are keeping it virtual, but Catherine was able to get all of the smart readers in our schools with, all of the requirements to be a volunteer right now. And they're starting with 2nd grade. And so December 1st is the first day that they plan to physically go into. So one reader will go in. We're going to do it during their lunch and they'll read a book. And then all of the kids in 2nd grade will go home with a book in their hands. And that will happen every single month for the rest of the school year. So big kudos to her for doing that. It takes a lot of extra work and time and coordinating and things like that. So things are great at Slater. We've had a couple of assemblies. We're really focusing on, we have a huge push on our attendance, our positive focus on attendance. And every month there's a class that gets an ice cream party. So it's kind of building up some competition and seems to work. So everything else is good.
And I forgot to mention my middle school athletes who also finished their fall seasons, and our cross country team in middle school did amazingly well. I think our top runner finished 5th in the whole state. So that was pretty exciting. Our volleyball teams were all very successful, and our football team, I believe, won 100 years. They also did a great job this fall season.
Thanks, Aaron.
I'm sorry.
That's it.
That's it.
I felt bad.
You knew more about the sports stats than I did. I was gonna fumble through it.
Sorry.
Obviously.
Who was that top runner? Was it a girl or boy?
Lucian
It was
Miller.
Lucian.
And then Regan Dupuy is hot on his heels most of the time. So that's pretty exciting. They're
That's
both going to
cool.
be freshmen next year. So our boys team is definitely going to be pretty darn strong next year.
Good.
We've got how many seniors? How many seniors? Two. Just the two.
As far as the middle school goes, the one thing that was really some successes on those CDL on the, well, yeah, the CDL days and then the SLC days that we use for the parent teacher conferences and stuff, we invited a bunch of the kids that were struggling at B's and S. We invited them. We spent, actually, I take that back, during our CDL day. We, those days on Monday, it was just kind of a readjust, and then starting Monday, we started calling parents, got together a roster of all the kids who were struggling, D's and F's. We started calling kids, and kids started showing up on that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week. We brought them in like in 2-hour shifts and had the kids come in and just work on those classes they were failing. A lot of those kids, and I actually tracked it, a lot of those kids brought their grades back up to passing. How did that compared, to the end of the quarter grade? I don't know, but because it just kind of ebbs and flows, because we were just focusing on the kids that had D's and F's as referenced by their progress reports. So we brought them in and made sure, we got them like 2 hours of attention for those 3 days. And there's a pretty good turnout of students. The parents were really appreciative of it as well. The robotics, that was awesome to see the robotics come in and give the kids an opportunity to work with these brand new robotics kits that hadn't been released out to like the general public. I don't want to say it was a prototype robotics thing, but kit, but it hadn't been released, and they brought it in for our schools. And it was run through the grant and with the help of the library. That was really fun for the kids to watch the kids come in and be a part of that. We opened it to all Harney County, and the two people that came in from Monty did nothing but say how cool they were, how nice they were, how respectful they were, and to go in there and kind of hang out and watch them. Some of the kids that that sign up for it that are struggling in class, I mean, we're totally focused on the task at hand and building those robots, learning how to program them, put them together, program them, work the apps and whatnot. So watching them work with robotics was pretty neat. In terms of how transformative it was for the students. I had one kid who's in there who's usually kind of he's a hard one to work with during the day, but for those 2 hours, for that stretch of time, I mean, he was focused on what needed to get done, and he was totally engaged, so it was really neat. Sports have been really fun. I've learned a lot about sports, and then to watch the kids run, I took a lot of pictures at the Idlewild run, but to watch the kids just training, going to practice, and then actually competing is really nice. So I really like that. The one thing that I know that I got a lot of positive feedback is the football games are recorded, and then once I get the link, I can post them to our Facebook page. And then for the volleyball games, I tried to live stream all of the games. And then there was an issue there with Facebook for a while, so I was only able to record it and try to post them. But anyways, I got a lot of positive feedback. The parents really appreciated to watch them, from home and have them live streamed. So I got that hooked up, and thanks to Dan and Andy for getting me an iPad that I was able to do that with. So grades are looking pretty good with our kids. Again, just trying to do a grade analysis from last year, this time to this year. I'm in the middle trying to do that and see how our kids are doing. As far as the grades are going, but the grades are looking pretty good. We have done a couple of assemblies, and those have gone relatively well. Got to chase a chicken. All the kids enjoying it.
Did you get him?
Yeah.
You got it?
He wasn't that hard. It wasn't feral, not like in a Rocky, man, where you're chasing him around the alleyway. I was waiting for to see somebody bust out the little tasers. It was a lot easier than I expected. The kids are like, oh, give me a greased pig, guys. Come on, make it hard. So I opened up my mouth on that one. So we have, speaking about, I have rolled out some iReady incentives for the kids, kind of incentivize them to increase their performance on iReady. For us as a school, in the way we use iReady, that data is a lot more immediate and a lot more meaningful for us in terms of where the kids are lacking, where they're struggling in math and reading. So I rolled out some incentives because we're bringing the kids in during part of their lunchtime to work on iReady. And then we're also using some of our advisory time for that to try to get the kids to make up for what they've lost in the last couple of years because of our current situation. But other than that, things are just going pretty well at the middle school. My staff has been really flexible with all of this, whether it's covering for each other, dealing with, just covering for each other and being flexible with a lot of the rule changes and stuff. They've been really good champs, and I appreciate all of them and all the hard work they've been putting forward. So.
I can piggyback on that. The son hit it on the head. We've had, and there was a stretch for about 3 weeks that we had a teacher have to cover for somebody every day. Which is the only reason we've been able to keep our doors open.
No,
So the
that's
staffs have really rallied to be able to do that. We had that week that we were shut down, and I had teachers come in my building, come in my office, go, is there any way we'd sit down, look at the numbers? And they said, no, we really are at the end. I mean, we're where we need to be. And then coming back and so the teachers are just, and they've done a great job. So the staff is great. And one other thing with high school I didn't mention, tomorrow we are actually taking a bunch of 21 seniors to Eastern Oregon for a visitation. So we're gonna go up there and they're gonna give us tours, sit down with a student panel. They're gonna go through financial aid, all that stuff. Which is great, even for the students that don't go to EOU, because admissions and financial aid is pretty much the same anywhere you go when it comes to the basic structure of it. So yeah, we're gonna go up there and spend the day, and Mr. Melly gets to ride a bus for the first time in a long time. So
It hasn't changed.
well, that's what I hear.
Uncomfortable.
Usually Amy, our college career readiness teacher would be taking the class, but since our sub situation is so imperial, plus she has a lab or something going on, she's staying back and I'll be taking it. But I always tell people, and it's true to the very end that a principal or vice principal would be gone for a day, and sometimes you don't even notice it. Teacher's gone, and it's a huge impact. It just is. I mean, that's how important the teachers and the paras are to the way the building's run. So it works out well that way. So excited to go see the kids in that action. I've taken them to college fairs before. Again, I'm excited about we're heading to bus for 4 hours, but that's okay.
Those are some really good successes. I'm proud of that. We only have about 10 minutes left, but instead we talked about successes and challenges, and everyone just talked about good things that happen. Have there been any challenges that could be shared?
We try not to talk about those, Mr. Frank. Well, I mean, the challenges have been the teachers that have got COVID, the absences, filling in. I mean, all those, we praise the teachers for covering and doing those things, but those have been gigantic challenges to get to that point. I think our students have rose to the occasion in a lot of these challenges with what they're doing in the classrooms. But I think a lot of it has just been the challenge of operating daily with less numbers than you typically have, at least for us at the high school. I don't know how at Slater, when you have one teacher the whole day, how you guys work to cover things. For us, it's period by period. But that, I mean, we praise them, but it's a huge challenge. I mean, that's been a huge challenge for us. But our teachers have done a great job. Hat off to them.
And the kids, it was kind of, I heard it from before we were going CDL, a lot of the kids were really, it was amazing. A lot of the kids were really upset that we had to do, that we had to go there. And I asked them, why are you so upset? I mean, well, we're not going to be able to, our learning's interrupted. We're going to miss our friends. We're not going to. So it was, hats off to the kids as well. I mean, and what they're going through, and the fact that I think they're finding a lot more value in their education, and just in the experience of it. So
It was a huge challenge. I thought everybody rose to the occasion.
Yeah,
You had
absolutely.
3 days of CDL. It was like it didn't happen the next week. They did it, they came back, and it didn't seem like it was too big of an interruption.
And we at Slater sure appreciated that we were able to, stay in session, because, our kids aren't old enough it's so much more of a burden on the parents when Slater's shut down, because a lot of the kids need daycare and whatnot. So it was nice that, we could look at it individually this year instead of just, the district is. So I I'm grateful for that. We were grateful for that because it definitely is much more meaningful for elementary kids.
Anything else?
Well, almost off topic, but Mr. Burns was talking about streaming the sports. And I like the middle school ones when they happen at the high school, well, you can watch them.
Yeah.
Except for I have a question. Our camera compared to everybody else's, I don't know if it's the internet where our camera's at or.
The
It's
the
the-
football one, I'm assuming.
No, the
Oh,
volleyball too, there's lots of lags, like where you watch, like from Corvallis this weekend, it was like watching ESPN compared to
Oh, now.
watching the camera.
Yeah,
You noticed the same thing?
I was there though, so it was like watching ESPN.
But there seems to be some issues with our,
Our football one is definitely having some issues. In fact, I'm not that kind of person, but the Wi-Fi thing that shoots it over to the football field that they sent us went out completely. And so at that point, when it went out, by the time we figured it out, we only had one more game. So they're like, well, we can't get it to you now, plus the weather's coming up for winter, so. And then Dan and Andy, they can do some sort of special microfiber or something. I don't know.
fiber optic.
Fiber optic, thank you. And they're gonna put that up there, so that should help the little camera. I mean, that should be perfect for that. That's what they tell me. I believe them. So we'll do that. And then as far as the high school one, I don't know. I stream it for the booster club in the boosters when we play home games, and on mine, it doesn't ever, I mean, it's got a lag, but all of them do. They have that 5
Seemed like I had to
buffer,
like,
4-minute
seemed
buffer.
like I had to like rewind 10 minutes to be able to watch it without buffering on.
See, and I don't know, that's something that I could call on now, because I haven't noticed it on mine. I mean, I watched the girls, well, but it was in Corvallis, I guess. I have watched a number of our events from our own camera, though, and I haven't noticed it, but I'll definitely call them, because that camera has been in there quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going on.
I love that. I mean, it's
close to
awesome that
10
it's
years.
available.
So it could be that we're just.
It's great that it's an option. I like that it's available. I utilize it always. If I'm not gonna be at the home game for some reason,
Yeah.
I'll even watch it later.
Yeah,
Hope
that's the
nobody
best
tells me
part
who
is-
won. I just watch it.
I think this was really good. I think it was good to have that discussion about site councils in the beginning, but I think it's really good for the board to hear the successes you guys have had and the challenges. And it's good to hear that the challenges were not as lengthy as at the beginning of the year. Things seem to have gone more smoothly.
no, and, you get people that call and people make call, I'm sure the teachers are, CDO, I'm sure they're happy, which is exact opposite. I mean, every one of our teachers, like, this is just a week, right? We're all, I mean, our teachers want me in the classroom. And them and the pairs and the secretaries, all that is the reason we're able to stay open, so.
Do we think as a group, does the board think they'd like to have another work session maybe in the spring? And one more in the year to check in, especially with the site council stuff?
Maybe close to the end of the year.
Right.
April, May.
Spring.
These are helpful for us. I mean, and we try, I guess, to just speak for me and Aaron in high school, but the ability to come in and just have conversations and not in a board setting where there's, I mean, for this is, it's just open conversation, more casual. I would appreciate any of these.
Maybe in April, we'll try to have another. And to go back to that site council thing, the work that's been, I keep forgetting about the work that's been done for the strategic plan this year, but that hits, to me, that hits the nail right on the head for what our discussions were at the August work session about what we wanted out of a site council-esque group anyway. So I feel like the work has already been started, so I feel like we've totally missed a deadline on that one. We can just develop it into something permanent that we can keep working with, whether it's district-wide or school-wide.
I'll just bring up, I had COAST meeting today and they talked about the state, so changing graduation requirements and not having a smarter balance in place, but this is still required for districts to implement, to do it every year. So I'm just gonna, maybe more at the high school level than anything. Is that not gonna be a challenge to get your kids to do anything on that test or even to take it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of the motivation that they would have.
You take this at the high school, go.
I was just, they already know that they don't have to do it, so I think. now
Then they
at
all
this
opt
point, it's
out.
like,
And Megan has to report
I mean,
that.
I can imagine.
It really would be, and again, we cannot do this legally. But it would be so much more useful for our kids to take the ACT. Doing this range, take the ACT as juniors. We pay for it. We have money in high school success to pay for these things. We set money aside for the college stuff. And the idea that we're gonna have so many students opt out of the SBAC, or ones that do take it, they're gonna say, why am I taking this? You know, what's the purpose? And I've owned it to see where you're at. I mean, the high school students, they figure that out. So to be able to take the ACT and then still take the SBAC, because then the SBAC scores don't mean so much to us. And we're not the ones that are saying we're not taking the SBAC. You know, we certainly cannot do this. Students can opt out. Every student can opt out. We cannot promote that. But take the ACT.
But we could promote the ACT or SAT.
Absolutely.
We could say, hey, here's what we really want you to do.
We're gonna, and we can make all the kids take the ACT, and then of course they could opt out if they wanted to. But we could really push the purpose forward, really push, hey, you're not sure if you're going to college, not sure if you're not, it's a great time to do it, we're paying for it. You know, oh, by the way, in 3 weeks, you know, we do have to take the SBAC. I think figure out if they want to opt out of it or not. Because the ACT, once essential skills are back, the ACT does the same thing. You can pass your essential skills with ACT scores, you don't have to take the SBAC.
I would just say with the ACT, I was thinking, they may not, maybe they don't think they're going to college right as soon as they graduate, but they're gonna wanna take it now, because if they decide to go to college 2 years after they graduate and take the test, I mean, they're not gonna be so hard on it.
Well,
And-
it's so valuable just to have that. I mean,
Yeah.
even just to have it to say, hey, I did the ACT, this was my score. Maybe I didn't do so well in high school because I just wasn't a high school minded classes every period, you know. But a lot of our kids that are like that would probably score pretty well in that ACT that could use that to their benefit down the road too, so,
And 2 things, they don't pay for it,
yeah. That's a
and
big
it's
one,
not on a Saturday.
which is
I
even.
mean, a lot of kids have to get here at 7 o'clock on a Saturday, no, we're gonna take it on Thursday, first to fourth period, we're gonna take the ACT, it's paid for, we get a better turnout, we'll get a better scores.
I'd like to see that incentivized. It's during, I mean, throw in some donuts or something and.
Well, we got
I'd
lots
like
of
to
donuts.
encourage-
We came, the day we came back from being out in CDL, we had 220 donuts.
Encourage those kids to opt out of the SBAC if there's no reason for them to take it, because that data is no,
We
it's
can't
flawed
do
data.
allow, we have to, they have state language in a state form, and we, and teachers can't promote it at all. We can heavily offer the form, and that's what we did last year.
We can promote the ACT, we can heavily promote the ACT, but we cannot promote it in place of the SBAC.
But if we have the opt-out form for the SBAC, and it's a fact, it's not promotion or propaganda to say this doesn't count from now until 24
I
at
don't-
least.
They haven't released the opt-out form, and I don't know what it's going to say. The other thing is they're shifting the test, so like the performance task is back after it went away last year. So we're back to, the data's not even gonna be comparable again. There is conversation about like the seed survey, which is asking questions about like your classes and your CTE classes and all sorts of interesting questions.
Actually-
That one is, they are gonna have to write a written letter to opt out of that, so there may be pieces that they don't really get a choice for taking it. But what we did last year was everyone got a paper copy versus just, you know, throwing it in our announcements or something like that. Of, you know, here you go, here's the forms, and just making it more readily available. Not that we want them to opt out, I think it's great for kids to practice good test taking skills and things like that with it. But we have to be super cautious that we're not, again, we can say, this will give you donuts and goodies and treats and celebrate you, yay you, and you take this and thanks for coming.
Have some veggie platters.
Yeah. But the thing, and it's interesting because the training this year was very different than my training last year as far as that opt-out form. Because I think the numbers of opt-out last year were, at least for us, it's huge. We had, again, I don't know how many high schoolers we tested, but not many.
About 14.
Yeah, and so I think that,
The sad thing about this, the state, again, something happened where the SBAC and blah, blah, blah. But when you have the SAT and the ACT that does the same thing for essential skills, it shows what kids are getting. And is beneficial for college, it makes no sense to me why the state has not adopted that instead of the S-band. And again, I'm sure they have their reasons. I'm smarter than I am, but the idea that we can prove the same thing in essential skills and take tests that have more meaning a year later when they graduate. Because essential skills, you read everything, essential skills, they'll be back at some point. And some districts may adopt them again. But to be able to prove them with the test that's just more useful as kids go forward, it seems to me, simple man, makes a lot more sense.
We are gonna have to conclude the work session, I think, because at 6, we're supposed to get on a call with our consultant and go into executive session. But if there are any other burning desires.
So what time does the board meeting start?
So we'll be in executive session like in a minute here, right? And then half hour, 45 minutes later, we'll go into.
And I can keep you posted on what the state's doing and what the, again, it was a very different thing this year. I think something else is coming. Whether it's changes to the opt-out process or things like that, but I can keep everyone posted too when more information's out there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right,
Riveting part of my job.
are we gonna try to hold executive session here?
No, we'll just go in my office over there. So we did get an email from Vince, and he was concerned that his part of the agenda was uncomfortable doing that in executive session.
Right.
So we could still do a check-in with me regarding evaluation things, as well as some labor negotiations, and then that won't take that long, and then we come back to open session to discuss with Vince. He can just present it to you.
Yeah, I knew.
Yeah.
That was all right. Thanks a lot for coming to another meeting. That was- It's your guys' bread and butter, but you don't really read it. It's pretty nice to hear what's going on. So.
Yeah, he's.
Tell him dies, it's old.
Yeah, he's doing that.
It's not like the one when it's shot about his health.
You don't,
Yeah, he.
But they do die with
the
it.
baseball again this year.
you don't know.
At least he gets.
Got a
Crazy
Big stock. Yeah. He did really well with the type one. He did his board break.
That's not right.
He did his board break and then he did his form. Yeah. Did you spend the whole day with Doug here?
That was cool. He's doing good.
That owl actually.
There's something.
Something's on there.
Is on there?
Yeah, I just went to the agenda. But I don't know, if he's not a panelist though.
I just like it elevates into the panels once we get going here.
Okay.
See him there. Did he leave us? Did he give up on us today?
Yeah, I bet he went to his private link.
Yeah,
I'll send it to him.
yeah, we just need to.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so we're coming into open session here again. So do you have the link to our regular board meeting webinar?
I'm sending it right now.
Okay, if you click on that, you'll come in and I'll just promote you to a brand list.
I like this setup. I mean, it gives us a chance to spread out.
That's what I'm saying. I like it.
I was just thinking, Steph had
Okay.
to stand up to present.
Yep.
She's supposed to stay there.
She's like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I like it.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes.
Yeah, so you should just be able to go in and be a.
So we probably.
All right, awesome, thanks. It'll take me a second to switch up on the TV.
Just.
All right, thanks.
He'll take all the incentives, but just wants recipes.
With all the new salaries, yeah.
Yes.
Can I just take it over there and then?
Yes,
see-
and so. I need another recipe. So he's already earned. I think all of my cheese recipes. All the good ones. Oh, cool. And so now he's like, okay, I still own it. I'm behind. He's like, I know all of it. So you guys have.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the big,
I mean.
I'm gonna put you on the big TV here real quick.
It's a fun one.
Let's you go down.
Yes.
We don't have the same. It was like.
Now, we
Drop the bass.
now, we drop the bass. Now, we drop the bass.
About the glove. The other, the conic.
This is my bad ear.
Their stiffest gloves are the cowhide. Doesn't have the top.
Another mitt, is this another mitt you're talking about?
Really, it's, oh, there, okay. It's a kangaroo skin. They call it. All right, it's really nice. Glove. You better play.
You have a glove.
Like glove question. Gloves and hats.
Baseball gloves?
Oh, yeah. I probably got 30 gloves.
Yeah, he's telling the kangaroos.
I was talking to
Kangaroos,
the
buffaloes, whatever.
baseball coach up in, must be at the port now, whatever school was there at the Port Memorial, he's in Stanfield. But he was talking about how he can't find any leather workers that can replace a glove because his kids, I guess the laces get broken in them. And he can't find anyone to relace them.
I carry a lace fit in my bag.
used to do it all the time.
A lot of kids.
Where is it in your bag?
It's enjoyable, it's relaxing. It's actually kind of.
My kids haven't had the release one yet, but we've had to definitely come up to slide. Well, that's cool though, when you get the long pieces.
Well, the piece is sticking out of the edges and yeah.
Apparently that's cool. It makes you look better. I think. You know,
COVID money. COVID money.
you win state. You might eat your words. To me, when you look at the roster, it kind of looks like that type.
They're gonna have to just leave the library. Kids are gonna have to learn some positions. So takes time.
All right. Come to order. We're now having the November meeting for the Harney County School District Number 3 Board of Directors. Real quick, before we jump to that, everyone would join me in a salute for a flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have our OSBA consultant set up to zoom in, so we're just gonna put him right at the beginning of the agenda, so. if That's all right. Vince Adams is gonna talk with us about our targeted feedback surveys that we use as a tool for our superintendent evaluation.
All righty, thank you very much for inviting me back to do another targeted feedback survey for the board. I'm really looking forward to it. I think both the board and the superintendent got good information. Yours was one of the first targeted feedback surveys that we did, and so we had a whole bunch that we did last year that produced a lot of good results for districts. So I'm really excited to do it again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Steve, can you allow me screen sharing? I'm sorry.
It's not letting you do that as a panelist?
Nope. If we can't, then I can just walk through this really quick.
Make him a presenter.
Yeah, we're good. He's a panelist now. Should be able to do it now.
There we go. All right, so you should be seeing a big black slide with the Harney County School District logo on there. Are you seeing that okay?
Yes. Yep.
Great, good. Okay. So I was intending to do an overview of the superintendent evaluation process for the new board members, and then check in with the board on what their intention was for the targeted feedback survey but I'll just go ahead and dive through these because I know the board has a very thick agenda tonight. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. As always, there is no slide here or no content here that is more important than any questions that you have. So at any point, stop me and raise a question, okay? And I can't see you really well. I've just got about another month where I can't get out. I won't be able to travel, but come December, I'll be able to get on the road again. And so next time I'll be able to be with you. So here we go. So what we're going to cover is a superintendent evaluation process, talk about the standards, talk about that survey and what the next steps in doing the survey and getting that information for the board, what that will be. Okay, I'm going to skip over that piece. So just an overview of the superintendent evaluation. This is one of the most important pieces of work that the board does across its year. And so I want to just go through the steps really quickly here. You know, in the spring, after you finished your superintendent evaluation, you should have just gone right back into that pre-evaluation planning for this year. And coming on, first big part of that is the superintendent's goals, and then laying up the process for what you're going to be doing over this year. You know, across the school year, you should be doing quarterly check-ins with your administrator. And so now is actually a really good time for that. We're through October, we've got school, kids in school, we've got the school year started. Now is a really good time for you to go in and have one of those quarterly meetings. Then you do it at the bottom of the year, and then again in the spring, and then wrap it up with that evaluation process. As you get in through the year and move towards, later this year, January, February, you're going to be gathering information. And that's why we're talking about this targeted feedback survey, because we need to do our homework on that now so that, when you move into information gathering, I'm ready with the information that you need for that component. And then, as you approach March, late February, going into March, you're going to be aggregating all this information together. And then you're going to go ahead and finish up that evaluation. You're going to meet with your administrator, give that feedback with all the components of the evaluation. And then you're going to meet in executive session with the superintendent, provide that evaluation, and then give a summary letter that you're going to share with the community. Typically is what's done. Okay. So, but first things first, no OSBA presentation is ever complete without having a policy, and you do have a policy on the evaluation of the superintendent. And in it, this is policy CBG. It says right at the first sentence, the board will formally evaluate the superintendent's job performance at least once each year. You'll also find language typically in the superintendent's contract. So all board members, you should be familiar with your superintendent's contract. So it's probably a good idea to just go in and read that. Particularly new board members, if you haven't read the superintendent's contract, I urge you to go ahead and get a copy of that and read that over so you know what that relationship is and what you are responsible for in it. Okay, the superintendent evaluation is a big project. And a lot of work of organizing it falls to the board chair. But it takes the whole board to do the evaluation in whole. And you need a plan. You need a plan, and get this on your calendar for the things that you're going to do across the year. Starting at the beginning, we went through those steps. All that should be built into the board's calendar across the year. So this is a calendar from the COSA OSBA workbook that the board used last year. This lays out events that need to happen across the year. At the beginning of the year, right after you finish up, you should have approved your criteria, the procedures that you're going to follow and the timelines. Hence, you reached out and asked for another targeted feedback survey. So yeah, the board needs to approve that process at the beginning of the year. You will be rating the superintendent on 8 standards that are nationally normed. They're developed for through a process of research on performance for superintendents that it's based on national scale research. You'll rate give the number rating from 1 to 4, 4 being accomplished performance, 1 being ineffective. There's some confusion sometimes when we're doing these ratings that each board member gives a rating and then we average it up. That's not how we do this. The board needs to speak with one voice when giving a response to the superintendent. Both when we're setting our expectations, for operation of the district, and when we're doing the superintendent evaluation. So this is a time when the board is meeting in an executive session, and you need to come up with a rating as a whole body. You're going to come up with one number that you're going to share with the superintendent and give rationale for why you gave that number. And you are going to be evaluating the superintendent based on his goals that he sets for himself. These are both professional goals for him as an individual, as a professional, but also for district performance. And those are goals that are agreed upon between the superintendent and the board together at the beginning of this process. So a big part of that is, getting, I'm out of order here, is getting artifacts or getting proof for that. You have to be able to measure progress. And so a big part of this, and one of the things that I really appreciate about this workbook that we did in collaboration with COSA, is that it gives us these nice list of artifacts or evidence that superintendents can bring to boards to show evidence of their growth and progress. It's a pretty long list. The list in there isn't a required list, so they don't have to bring all the things that are in the workbook. It's just a place to get ideas so the board and the superintendent can work together. And what are going to be those items, whether that's going to be data, or is that agendas for meetings where, out in the community. It can be program notes. It could be any number of things to show the work that the superintendent has done and their own professional growth. It could be, reflections after a conference, could be any number of things. So there's a nice list in there. And so one thing that I really appreciated, having been a board chair and having conducted superintendent evaluations. So part 4, this is the part that we're really interested in. This is the evaluation, the targeted feedback survey. And this is not a 360 survey. A 360 survey is distributed broadly throughout the organization and in the community. The key difference here with the targeted feedback survey is that this one is really intended to fill the gaps in the board's knowledge around the superintendent's performance. There are some things that the board can see firsthand, can see when the superintendent is out in public, can see how he conducts himself and the work he does in board meetings. But when he's working with his leadership team and with educators in buildings, that's something the board doesn't get to see. And so this is a survey that can get at that type of information. And so the board identifies key stakeholders, individuals that can provide that type of information that, sometimes can be hard to detect. So, but I want to underscore that a targeted feedback survey is only one component of the superintendent evaluation. It needs to go with the board's evaluation of the standards based on their knowledge and experience. And then the superintendent's own self-evaluation, those artifacts that he is going to provide you to validate, based on his progress towards his own goals. And then at the end of the last part of the workbook here, part 5, is that evaluation summary, which is a letter that you share with the public and also goes in the superintendent's personnel file at the end of the process, at the end of the year. Okay. That was really, really fast. I want to pause here. And are there any questions about the superintendent evaluation process? I skimmed across a lot of detail.
Mr. Adams, I think we'll get into it when we start delving more into this targeted feedback survey. But
great.
you talked about the differentiation between this and a 360 survey. What, in your experience, would be a decent number that would give us a big enough group for good data, but isn't just, blasting out a shotgun blast to the whole community? 20 people?
That really varies by district, I would say. And it also depends on the types of information that we're looking for. And so, going back to this is a good opportunity. This is a perfect segue for me. I'm going to jump forward and let's see if I can get this to work for me. Perfect. It's loading up. So I can answer your question more directly. Using last year's survey. And so, looking back at last year's survey, we sent surveys out to 20 staff members and 21 parents or community members. So 41 people in total. We had a 90% response rate, really good response rate. Everybody provided open-ended feedback. It was a very robust survey. I would say for a community your size, I think that's a completely reasonable number of respondents for this type of survey. It's not a 360 survey, and 360 surveys can become a forum for complaint. They tend to skew more negative, where we feel that the targeted feedback survey is a better formative evaluation tool, trying to find, identify those strengths and weaknesses, but in a way that's constructive. And so that's the intent behind this tool. With a larger district, so say I was working with Salem Kaiser or Portland Public's, I might allow more respondents, 50 or 60. But again, the whole point here is that it's targeted, that we're identifying those key stakeholders in the organization and the community who can best inform your administrator in their professional growth. Great question.
Also, I think it's probably good to point out that we haven't looked at any targeted feedback survey or any of those standards yet this year. And so for our new board members, they haven't seen this at all. And I dropped the ball on that and should have emailed something out. The last time we spoke, I thought maybe we'd be getting something emailed, and then I totally forgot about it. So if we could really talk about like those standards selected, you've got just the headlines for them, but if you could talk a little bit about those as a refresher for the board members that have done it before, and then
right. So the last time we were going through this process, we actually did this process a month later last year. So we're ahead of the game this year. And so it was about this time last year that we talked about this. These were the 3 standards that you identified: ethics and professional norms, communication and community relations, and effective organizational management. And so if we go down here, I actually have those standards here in detail. Let me zoom in. So this first one, standard 2, ethics and professional norms, has 3 descriptors in it. The first one is ensures ethical decisions and cultivates professional norms and a culture including equity, fairness, integrity, transparency, trust, and collaboration and perseverance. Okay, and so we have questions corresponding to that. The next descriptor is makes ethical and legal recommendations to the board. And then the last one is models ethical behavior in their own conduct and cultivates ethical behavior in others. And so when we have questions that correspond to each of those descriptors, the number of them varies. And for your survey on this the last time, you chose to focus on descriptors 2.1 and 2.3. So those first 2 makes ethical and legal recommendations and ensures ethical decisions. Okay, moving on. Standard 5, which is communication and community relations. Over here, you focused on 5.2, which was engages on and effectively communicates with diverse families, community partners, and other constituencies to strengthen student learning. 5.3, which cultivates relationships and partnerships with members of the business, civic, and local government in support of their advocacy for the district, school, and community needs. And then 5.4 is the last one here, goes beyond the district and local community to advocate for students at the county, regional, and or state level. Okay, and so there are corresponding questions that go with those descriptors that were included in the survey last year. And then this last standard here, standard 6, effective organizational management. You did, it looks like all 4 of them here. Implements equitable strategies, processes, and systems to recruit, hire, develop, and retain high-performing personnel who demonstrate a shared commitment to student success. The next one was establishes productive relationships with associations while managing labor relations and contracts effectively. Third one is creates and maintains organizational structures that maximize the district's capacity to positively impact student learning. And then 6.4 is creates a comprehensive system of professional development for all staff to continuously improve and increase their leadership capacity. And so again, there are questions that correspond to each of those descriptors that were included in the survey. We try to keep the survey fairly short and punchy. We try not to keep it below, try to keep it below 15 questions so that we get a higher response rate. You know, particularly parent groups are heavily surveyed. I think we all are. And so we try to keep this survey fairly succinct. And so that's why we limit boards to 3 standards, and we limit the number of questions that are included in it. So those were the standards that you looked at last time. And we talked about who you know, in broad terms, who you sent the survey to. I want to ask the board a few questions about what do you want to do this time? And so the big question here is, do you want data over time? Do you want to have a survey that allows you to compare last year's performance to this year's performance? And really, this is a question of, do you want to keep the standards and descriptors as they are and essentially keep the survey questions exactly the same? Or do you want to develop a new survey and look at different topics? Or do you want to have the same respondents, or do you want to change who you sent it to? And so this is a decision that the board needs to make. If you want to have data over time, I would suggest that if you want to make this data comparable, that you really need to keep the survey the same. We do differentiate in the report based on the standards. So we can, if you wanted to look at a different standard, we can do that. But I would suggest looking at data over time. And, you know, I used to do data for a living when I worked at Oregon State University, and even 2 years of data isn't quite enough to really prove a trend. Really, you need 3 years of data. So keeping things the same for a little while is usually a good practice to watch change over time. So, you know, I'll hand it back there and try to get a sense of what the board would like to do.
I just emailed the board the 2-page PDF worksheet from last year, and I'm sorry I didn't do that before, but it has all those standards and the steps within each standard so that you guys can look at that. I like the idea of having data over time, but one of the things that I thought of when I looked at the evaluation standards, standard number 4, which is culturally responsive instructional leadership and improvement, I think in light of the pandemic, I think that one would be very appropriate to test on. I'd be fine with keeping the other 3 because I think communication and community relations would be an important one again, and effective organizational management again. But see what you guys think about those standards. In terms of who gets it, I don't even know who got it last year, but I did have some ideas about liking to see, for example, for staff, if we had the senior staff member and the junior staff member for each of the 3 schools or 4 schools, that would be representative. For parents, if for each of the schools, we had a parent whose kid's been in the district the whole time, a new parent, because we've had a lot of those and they've had experience with other districts, and maybe some parents who live in the district, but their students go elsewhere, so we could get some feedback on, how to draw them back in. So I think a lot of the 41 people that we had would probably meet a lot of that criteria, but I'd like to make sure it's representative of that.
Yeah, I think it's wise to keep the same, same questions from before, the same standards. What was the 4th one that you suggested?
Culturally responsive instructional leadership.
We can go over that if you'd like. I can just click on it here and pull it out. Oh, if it would layer appropriately. Let's drag it up over here. Well, that isn't working either. Hold on, stay with me. Drag it over here. Now I can. Can you see that okay?
Yep. Yeah.
So the first descriptor is evaluates, designs, fosters, and implements coherent systems of curriculum, instruction, supports, assessment, and instructional leadership. The second one is implements coordinated systems of support, including coaching and professional development for staff. Manages an appropriate system of assessments, data collection, and analysis that supports instructional improvements, equity, student learning, and well-being, and instructional leadership, and ensures instruction throughout the district utilizes culturally responsive practices, and all staff are trained.
Yeah, I think that's a good metric a good standard
I like that.
to assess. Do you feel that we could have all 4 standards and still keep it at a reasonable length in terms of questions?
You're getting pretty long, so I would suggest that the board let go of one of the other standards if you wanted to switch out. I would also suggest that this might be an area where the superintendent could also bring some artifacts for this, particularly on that last descriptor, ensures instruction throughout the district utilizes culturally responsive practices and all staff are trained. That's a fairly easy thing to quantify, although challenging across the pandemic. So most recent efforts we might be, because it's just been a tough time for doing professional development. A lot of this actually, there could be artifacts that are surfaced on that.
You
But
mentioned,
if the,
excuse me, you mentioned we should probably consider eliminating one of the ones we've had in the past if we're gonna add in this number 4. Are there any of the ones that we used last year that you feel might be duplicating one or the other that we could look at about possibly eliminating from this year's feedback?
So what do we
so I think
Sorry.
number standard 4 overlaps somewhat with effective organizational management to a certain degree. This one also talks about instruction as well.
One of the things I thought of when I looked at those standards, standard number 6 has some keywords right from our goals about retention, because it talks about retaining high performing personnel. And then that new standard we're talking about, that was another thing that was part of that goal was, I think it was retention through the pandemic or something to that effect. And so I thought that was fitting.
I think to me, the communication and organizational management are pretty important. To me, if we were to get rid of one, it would be the ethical one. And I would say that, to me, the ethics on professional norms are such a big thing that they would be obvious and come up. And I don't know if we had to get rid of one, I would say it would be 2.
I would strike.
Yeah, that makes better sense.
So include 4 and delete 2? Is that what we're talking?
Yeah. Try to keep
That's what I would
try to keep the questions the same. And I think the number 41-ish is appropriate. I don't think we need to go any more than that. Last year, I think we submitted names of teachers, people in the community, and then organizational leaders. I don't know if we got a good response back from all the board members last year. I don't think so. We could have criteria like what you said. That would be a different method than what we used last year. So
We can take advantage of this just for thought. With brainstorming, just trying to objectively get a good sampling of people.
We don't have a list of who got responsibility.
We have it.
We probably have a list, yeah.
I still have the list, the distribution list.
And Brenda has it also, so.
Yep. And I would say that it is, I would say it's a good list. It seems to represent the community well, has a broad array of individuals within the district and also stakeholders and parents in the community.
Rob, what you're asking is how many on the current list might overlap with what you're suggesting?
Well, I think a lot of them would, because we probably have most of the administration, I would hope, because I think that's important, direct reports being represented. And one of the things we talked about in one of our work sessions, when we talked about how important it is to prepare those students for the workforce and for the world after school and having them come back to Harney County. And I thought hearing from some of the largest employers, and maybe we had some of those included on that list, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fine with maybe getting a copy of the list that we went to and do some cross-referencing and see if we need to add names or people to the final list we provide Mr. Adams.
Mr. Adams, we need to develop everything in the evaluation in open session, but coming up with a list of specific names, does that need to be done in open session?
Yes, if the board is going to discuss it, I mean, yes, you'd need to do that in open session, but you could have board members submit, say 3 or 5 names, and then that'd be 25 people. So you need to do what, 7, 8, that would be 40 people. But you'd probably get overlap. So maybe do 10 names if you wanted to do it that way. I think if you're going to, but I would suggest that, the board consider just going with the same respondents again. And we'll be able to directly compare standards 5 and 6 across, the 2 years. And then you're switching out standard 4. So that's not going to be comparable, it doesn't compare to standard 2. So, but you would have 2 standards that you could directly compare across the years if you stick with the same respondents.
I like the idea of having comparable data, but I know last year, I think I was misinformed and kind of was hoping that we could do a random sampling, and we couldn't, and so we ended up submitting names, and I don't even remember who those names are, but I would feel more comfortable at least going over that list again and seeing what we have. It's not so much the individual names that I'm worried about, it's the categories, making sure that the staff and the community is kind of authentically represented.
yeah, I mean, I like the objectiveness of, the most senior, the most junior. I think those are fine. I think there's value in doing the exact same as before, but it would be nice for everybody to look at that. I just don't know if we would all, how that would look or how that would work to get all these names and shuffle through everything. And I mean, it would be, I can't imagine how that would work out.
Is this something you would want to sit down and look at the list together, have the board members submit the names to us, and I could sit down and
It's just where do they fit in here? And because there could be
Yeah.
people on there that moved away from last year. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think you need to look at the list from last year. Try to see if it comes close to covering this.
We could do that, but the more I think about it, I don't actually feel like that would be a better set of data, because those same respondents, it's subjective. I mean, that number scale is a little subjective. And if they don't remember how they responded last year, they might actually have a higher opinion of one of those categories this year, but give it a lower score inadvertently. I would prefer to have this similar set of standards, but maybe have fresh eyes look at it, because that should still be representative of the community rather than giving it to the same people.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as we do a similar process, I like the process last year. I just don't know if everybody did it. And it was basically, you know, a list of employees and a list of organizations and a list of like parents, I believe. And, you know, if we all submit individually who we feel would be good on that list, and then you know, I think that it would be fair for probably you two to sit together and, you know, exclude any that were that you feel were appropriate or whatever, if any, and go from there. But you know, I don't know. I don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be.
The more I think about it, the more I would prefer to have this be a tool for us as a snapshot of what things are right now, not a comparison to last year and seeing if there was improvement, because there's so many variables, and especially if we start adding in standards that are more appropriate to what's going on right now. But I think there's a lot of things when we evaluate the superintendent that we may not have firsthand knowledge of. And to me, that's what it's a tool as, and I prefer for it to just be a snapshot personally.
I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's, you know, it's not really a big enough sample to be really scientific and to, you know, track trends. And I think, you know, either way we do it, it's fine. I think it's, again, I don't want to make it super complicated. I don't want a huge weight of people. Like I noticed on your parents one, I don't want to be weighted the parents that are out of the district. I think that should maybe be representative, but not a big portion. Like right now, if we only had 6 parents, that would be, you know, a third of the respondents would be in that category. I don't think that's reasonable. I think that's way too high of a representation. So I think that, again, that would be worth having maybe 1 or 2 of those people out of 20, but I don't think it'd be wise to have a big percentage of them.
So if you had 20 parents and you covered just 3, 1 from each school, you know, that'd be 3 out of 20.
Yeah, that's appropriate to me.
Yeah.
Mr. Adams, if we kind of decide on, as far as our group, that we wanted, let's say we wanted to take, Mr. Quick and I'll sit down and look at the list, and board members could send me names maybe that would fit into some of these criteria, and we could sit at it and see where it needs supplemented. What do we have to do with that to make sure that we're compliant with open session things?
So, I mean, if the board is going to deliberate on it, then you need to do it in session. But if board members are just going to submit names for consideration, and that you have, if say the chair and the superintendent sit down and create the final list, you know, with the mind of, we're looking at each of these individuals and then trying to identify the individual stakeholders that are going to provide us with the best and most accurate information that's going to be supportive of the superintendent, then that's a totally reasonable process. And that is, I mean, as I recall, it was very similar to what you did last year. You had
I like that method better than hashing out names of individuals in a public meeting. I'd rather have you guys sit down with a list that we suggest, and you can eliminate or modify or change as long as it's collaborative. I think that's a way better method.
There was a phrase that Mr. Adams used when I talked to him a couple weeks ago about having an authentic representation of our community and our staff. So maybe if you look at this list that I gave you, or you think of anyone that you think that person would have some really good feedback, maybe shoot those to me. Mr. Quick and I will get together and look at that other list and see if there's anything that needs supplemented. And I'm guessing the total list won't be half again longer than it is now. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
All right. And so has the board settled on these three standards, standard 4, standard 5, and standard 6?
We had 4, and we said yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. And then my understanding is that the board will then provide a new respondent list for us to send the survey out to.
We would have to officially adopt the list in open session at our next meeting, correct?
No, you do not have to adopt. All right. Good work, board. That was the meat of the work that needed to get done. So let's flip back to here, and we can zip through the last part of this and be done. So next steps. So there are these overall questions at the end of the survey. What is working well with regards to the superintendent's role in school district? Please list specific examples, and now what areas offer room for improvement. You know, I'm supposed to ask you if you want to include it. I'm just going to say, let's include this in the survey. We got really good responses from these questions, particularly in your district. So next step. So one of the things that we're going to need to do is determine when the board wants to go ahead and have this report. I think last year we did it in February, mid-February was when I reported. So we're going to need to get the survey out in time to allow me, you know, to give people time to respond, and then give me time to sit with the data and go ahead and create the report for you. So yeah, we're going to need to set that targeted feedback survey calendar. And I can work offline with the secretary and the board chair to go ahead and get that done. I'm going to need those survey respondent contacts from the board. We'll go ahead and get the survey out. Once I have that list, we'll go ahead and get that out. Now that I have the standards, I can have my admin team build the survey, and that's really quick and easy. And then I'll wrap up with doing that analysis and develop the reports for you. You'll get 2 reports from me. You'll get a summary report that just gives you a broad overview of the results of the report. And then you're going to get a detailed data report from me that I'm going to present to you in an executive session. And that I just talked about the next slide. So summary scores, themed responses. There are also open-ended responses to this survey. And those are very rich. And so we'll include that information as well. We'll pull themes out of those and provide areas of strength and areas for growth for the superintendent. But I want to remind you that don't forget that there should be no surprises in this process. This is not a gotcha moment. We're not trying to get the superintendent. This is we're trying to get information that is going to support and strengthen your team. It's supposed to promote individual growth of the superintendent and strengthen the relationship between the board and the superintendent is the whole point of this. So we can have strong and solid conversations. So with that, I'm really excited about this product. This is my second year working with it, and it's a good one. And so I'm glad that the board has chosen to continue with this process, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
So what time frame for getting these back? Couple weeks, a week?
How many names do you want from us?
So last year,
Once they get the letters.
yeah, last year we, I think it was a little less defined, but like I think I did all the administrators and some well-respected teachers in each grade or each school, and then a list of parents that are respected, I think. So it was less defined. I didn't have any information like what we do and think that's a good idea, but, so I think I gave like 20 names or something like that.
You want it, and you're asking what
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of
what,
time does Rob and Mr.
Yeah.
Cook need to?
yeah, I think sooner the better, probably next couple of weeks.
Mr. Adams, you might
Yes.
remember this from last year, but our official evaluation, according to the contract, is done in January, before the end of January. If we were to get these names to you within a week, could you have results for us by then?
By the end of January? Yeah, if you get it to me quick, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we're not even to Thanksgiving yet. Yeah, you bet.
We'll get you, all of us get them
Yeah.
then within a week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you get that to me in a week, we'll need to have the survey out for probably a couple weeks. And then I need to sit with the data for another week, and then we're good to go. So yes, we can definitely do that by end of January. When is your January meeting?
First
11th.
11th.
111?
Yes.
So that will be, and would the board want to do that, or do you want to do a separate meeting? Well, we can discuss this offline. It's not a big deal. I'll aim at 111 though. It's a good date for me to aim at. Happy to do it. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I hand it back to the chair, and thank you all for the time, and have a good meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. On to the agenda. So first thing, public comment. We had one card, Chris Wiseman. Just remember, for public comment, like to hear from you. Make sure to keep it civil and preferably under 3 minutes.
So, seeing we had a bunch of time already. One, I'd like to thank Robert for calling me today and asked me to get involved in the curriculum review. Very much looking forward to that. I guess there's kind of, I've come in here and discussed a few hot topics. But one right now, if you look at the vaccine mandate that's rolling out, they're now changing the definition of vaccinated to include booster shots for the people that work for the school board, teachers. So they're going to be recommending, if I'm not mistaken, Johnson & Johnson's every 2 months, and I think the rest of them are every 6 months. And so it's like it's going to be an ongoing item. I know that there was some discussion at one time about maybe pushing back or refusing to enforce some of the mandate that was discussed. It might be a good discussion to have again, because it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I know you're not liable if something happens to a teacher if they get injured from taking a shot, and neither is the company that makes that material. But I think part of you would feel responsible if you had the opportunity to change that. If someone was actually injured, someone was paralyzed, ended up with a heart condition. I know if my child was given a shot at the school and something happened to her, I would definitely find this board to be responsible. Because this board is the ultimate authority when it comes to all the schools in this district. And I entrust my child with you guys to teach her the skills that she needs, right? So it's my job until she's 18 to make sure she can do the things she needs to do when she turns 18. In other words, if she runs into something, I'm liable. If she breaks something, I'm liable. If she hurts somebody, I'm liable. If she gets pregnant, I'm liable. Right, but I'm entrusting her education to you guys and her health while she's with you. So anyway, running lower on time, real simple. I try to hand out a little sheet here to talk about COVID deaths. deaths versus cases, and as far as Oregon goes, we sit number 6 as the best ranked for deaths per million and number 4 for cases per million. But we have still the most stringent masking policies for our children. And if you look at these other states, which New York, Florida, and even the nationwide average, the masking policies don't seem to be changing any of that. You know, and having a background in power, going to confined spaces and knowing masks, and if you read OSHA's regulations, there's a time allowance for being in a mask that has more than 2 straps, which OSHA considers a respirator. And it's because it can physically harm you to restrict your air that much for too long. So again, I would urge the board to take a look at it again. And see if there's some way that we do something about it. That's all I got next.
Thank you.
Right, next question. That's right.
All right. If there's no other public comment, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda that they saw? Is there a consensus we can pass the consent agenda as presented? Consensus? Okay, by consensus, consent agenda passes. Next is school reports. We had some in our packets, but I think we get to hear from Mrs. Lord.
Yep, so the first thing is we've been continuing on with our positive focus on attendance. Our class of the month with the best attendance was Mrs. Kluse's 4th grade. They enjoyed an ice cream party. We also will be rewarding 140 students with perfect attendance for the month of October, and that is up from 91. And I mentioned that our attendance at Slater has been really good, so that just goes to prove that. We celebrated Red Ribbon Week. I think it was the 3rd week of, no, it was the last week of October. And we did a daily dress up theme, and we just focused on being drug free. All the students and staff enjoyed it, and we were super lucky to participate in a coloring contest that was sponsored by Harney Partners for Kids and Families, and then Burns Paiute Tribe. And Paisley Held, which she is a 4th grade student, won the coloring contest, and she received a really nice Amazon Fire. Sadie Davis, a 5th grader, received a $100 gift card, and then Silas Johnson is a 3rd grader, and he received a $50 gift card. So very much appreciate those guys donating and supporting our school. Mrs. and Mr. Dixon donated 1 pumpkin to each teacher at Slater. So we decided to have a pumpkin decorating contest. Each class got together and decided how they wanted to decorate it. We lined them all up in the cafeteria, and as the students went to lunch, they got to vote on their best decorated. So I included a lot of pictures in my report this month. Mrs. Burns' 2nd grade came up with one that they decorated that looked just like a hamburger. So they got 1st place, and Mrs. Kluse's 4th grade got 2nd place, and Mrs. Fenton's class got 3rd place. And then Halloween is an exciting day at Slater, and you can enjoy all those pictures of all of the different groups. This year, each grade level or group of people came up with a theme. So thought you guys might enjoy those. And then the last thing that I included was our results from our iReady diagnostic testing. So the first set of information is the 2020 beginning of the year data. So that was at the very beginning of last year. One thing I want to point out is that there was only 258 students that were assessed during that time. That's because kindergarten had not completed their diagnostics yet. So that's why that number was lower. The next band there is the end of the year data from last year. So if we compare that first one to the second one, you can see huge growth. We want to see our kids in the green. Okay, those are benchmark kids. Yellow are our strategic kids that are about one grade level below, and then our red is our intensive kids. So you can see that at Slater, we made huge growth last year. So then I want you to take the top band again and compare it to the bottom band, which is the 2021 beginning of the year data so we just completed this. Kindergarten just completed their diagnostic the month of October. So first off, we did assess 336 students, which was 78 students more than the beginning of the year in 2020. We started with less intensive students. So this year we started with 39%. Last year we started with 41. We have more strategic students, so that's the one grade level or below. So we started with 44% this year rather than 36. And at Slater, we're very optimistic that we're going to see more growth than last year because we're doing small groups, we're doing our walk to read, we're doing our math building, all of those interventions. And then the next page is the data from math. So again, kindergarten wasn't included in that first band. If you compare the beginning of the year 2020 to the end of the year, which was May of 21, huge growth. To point out, we started the year with 13% of our students that were on benchmark or above grade level, and we ended the year with 41%. So it's huge growth. And then again, comparing to the beginning of last year to where we started this year, we have a little bit, a few kids less that are on grade level or behind. But I think that a lot of that is that the kindergartners were not assessed at the beginning of the 2020 year. And so that makes obviously a bit of difference. So again, we're optimistic that we'll see more growth than we did last year because we are doing those small groups and a lot of good things are going on at Slater. So. We have a Bulldog assembly next week, and that's our enrollment numbers there.
I liked your comparison with the iReady data. That's visualize that, so thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good. Any other questions or anything?
Thank you.
All right. On to the next item, superintendent's report.
Okay, after our last meeting, we had Shannon Chris from ESD and about local service plans and what ESDs do. I met with her after the meeting, following week anyway. They had put together kind of a proposal, what it could look like in the 22-23 school year if we did kind of like Crane's doing with some pass-through dollars. That top left part of that where it says flow through SD4, that'd be Crane, and then SD one right below it's also pass-through dollars at Crane. So they do their own special ed services out there. So they're just pass-through dollars. They figured if it worked for us, it'd be $129,000 of pass-through for special needs. And for technology, further down there, flow through for number 3 would be $91,000. And so right now it's opt-out payment, the prior year $375,000, $376,000. It just doesn't make financial sense at this point. I'd like to break it down further before our next meeting and kind of show you what it looks like financially with all the different services that we currently use that money for. But financially, it just doesn't add up at this point to jump back into ESD. I know it would be nice, to have that relationship and to see that you're part of the ESD, but we can still have a good working relationship with the employees at the ESD without being in the ESD, if that makes any sense. So I just don't see financially where it benefits us to go back.
So the flow through dollars would come back to us, but the things like the administrative support and technology, those services would be included, or that? Yes,
That's right. That's right. I'd like to put it more into that's a spreadsheet. So you can kind of see exactly, here's what we would currently do with these. If we were to use these flow through dollars, how would we would use them? What services we would provide? And so I just want to give you at least the initial, this is what they gave us. But in the future, I want to give you a little more detail so we can compare it a little bit better. I did want to let you know that I did meet with their very productive meeting as always. We'll follow up in January with some more details. In terms of enrollment, down a little bit this month to 775. Last month it was 782. We still have an average of 782. But no, that's not weighted EDM. It's just pure number of students that are sitting in our classrooms right now. So pretty typical. Most time we tend to use them as we go out throughout the year. Most districts, but we're hoping that that doesn't lose. We don't want that trend to happen every month. We'll have 7 to 10 kids. In terms of an COVID update, you're well aware that we did shift for 3 days to the high school and the middle school on the I think it was October 18th or October 19th, just for 3 days. We just plain didn't have the substitute coverage for teachers that were ill for those 3 days. But really hats off to our staff members who got the Chromebooks to the kids at the middle school. It was pretty seamless, 3 days. We got things done. They came back on that following Monday. It was like it never happened. So we were feeling very fortunate. We were able to keep Slater in school that day. And, forward to that time. We hope we don't have to do it again. So I really appreciated the flexibility that the staff showed, really their readiness to do it. It wasn't like we needed a week to get ready for it. They were ready to just go for it. In terms of strategic planning, we met with Jerry Colonna, our consultant yesterday with the committee. We're making great progress towards updating our strategic plan. And we're still on target to have that to you by the end of January. Really, the final piece I want to talk to you a little bit about is AVID. AVID's a program that my previous district became an AVID district. AVID, the program that's going throughout the United States, and they have a grant coming out this month that allows people to districts opt into AVID, become an AVID district. So we're going to apply for that grant. We're also going to try to send a team in December, their national conference, to get our team a little bit of the insight of what AVID is exactly. From my previous experience with it, it's really it's a group, it's an organization that's come together and they've gathered the best, I would say, strategies for teaching, and they've gathered the best strategies for learning and really focused on those ideas. So it's not like it's a forced school improvement, it's a school improvement that we can take on together, really raises the bar in districts. And their ultimate goal is to get kids ready for career in college after high school. But giving them the right tools, not only the students the right tools, but giving the teachers the right tools to be able to help those students. So I got a couple videos here I'll share with you. At least an idea what other people are doing. Sounds not gonna work. Oh, I turned the TV sound on. Okay. that's gonna work with that. So, I will send you the link to have it, 3 different links. One of the videos is 1 minute, the other 2, maybe the other is 5, but it'll give you kind of a better overview of what it is. If we ended up doing it, it does cost significant money to be part of the organization, but they do require districts to send avid teams to summer institutes where they learn strategies, they plan, they get leadership involved, and it kind of gets everybody on board. And I really feel like our district is at a point where we can raise the bar K through 12, have high expectations for everybody. And I think we're at a point where our staff members really get along well with each other, they function well together, and I think we could really move our district forward in a positive direction. That would be something that would be unique to our district in our area. I don't know of any other districts in our area that are doing that currently. I think that's something that our district could really hang their hats on and help our district progress. So I'll send the links to you after the meeting and I go from there. Unless you got any questions.
At the last meeting, we talked about the use of ESSER funds for the audio system and also about the Cardno deal with Lincoln. Are both of those progressing as planned?
Yeah, Cardinal, they're set to be ready, I think, by, I want to say the end of the year. My last one. Something close to January. Put out there. And the ESSER plan, that's progressing. I just talked to them today. We have to send them some network type things before we get an actual date on the calendar for installation, but that should be moving forward as well in the next couple months.
Anything else for superintendent's report?
That would be it for me tonight.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the financial reports and bills. Did anyone have any questions on those?
Actually, I did.
Oh.
Just because I don't understand. I'll find it here in just a second. I know Brenda's gonna be able to answer this real quick.
We hope so.
Under
We don't have our
cash-
business
Under
manager.
cash receipts, 14,000 from MOTEC and 24,000 from Harney Electric. What do they pay us for?
Not my area.
I'm really racking my brain. I think why we get checks from both.
I know they pay a huge amount of property tax.
But that would
I know
come from
but that
property
comes from
tax.
account, yeah. Anyway. Somebody said, yeah. Yeah, 14,556 from OTEC and 24,458 from Harney Electric. I mean, it's money coming in, so we don't want to. But it just caught my eye. I can identify the other ones as far as money coming in, where they come from, but those just jumped out at me. That's all I have, Mr.
Do you want to hold off on approving it, or do you feel comfortable approving it? We can ask Kara about that next.
I'm very comfortable approving it.
Okay. If no one else has any questions, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financials as presented.
I will move that we accept the financials as presented.
Second,
I'll second that.
moved and seconded to accept the financials. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is the donations. Is there a volunteer to read them?
Let's see, I think I can get it up here a little quicker. No, I'll read them for you.
Excellent.
Got up the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, that's what mine brought it.
Here, I can read them real quick.
Okay.
From the Dorman Miller Estate to the Slater Elementary Music Program, a fiddle, and a cash fundraiser by students for the Slater Elementary Music Program, $219.
I will move that we accept the donations as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting the donation signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Is that an aye out of you, Mr. Fulton?
It was a silent aye, but yes, it was.
Yes, okay. Motion passed unanimously to accept the donations. Okay, next is the bargaining agreement for the certified staff.
I'll just add on that, we met several months starting in May this year, finally came to an agreement. I believe they're ratifying, or did ratify it last night. We'll get the final approval on that, but the bargaining agreement does include cost of living allowances for the next 3 years for the teaching union, as well as paying for their PERS, which is new. We're one of the fewer districts in the state that did not do that. So I believe the current contract should keep our contract very competitive with all the schools in Eastern Oregon right now. So I think it'll be helping our employee retention plan as well as having this collective bargaining agreement approved.
Thank you to Mr. Fulton for representing the board. Mr. Fulton and Mr. Quick for getting that through. It's exciting. Not only will we be more competitive, we'll be straight up competitive, it sounds like. So that's great.
I would make a motion, we adopt the collective bargaining agreement between Harney County School District number 3 and the Burns Hines Education Association.
Second,
I'll second.
properly moved and seconded that we accept the agreement between Harney County School District 3 and the Burns Education Association. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is ODE move request.
As odd as it sounds, we couldn't simply turn in an address change from ODE. We had to actually have the board approve an address change on a form. So this is just approving your new address for this building.
Based on the fact that we're sitting at that new address, I would make a motion to approve the ODE address change request form.
Second? I'll second. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. OSBA elections. On odd years, we elect representatives for the legislative committee. And we are in the southeastern region, and Steve Lau is the candidate. He's from Klamath. One of the things he said on his resume was one of the things he'd like to work on is local control of curriculum. So we don't have to cast a vote, but if we're in favor of that candidate, we could.
What was that candidate's name?
Steve Lowell, L-O-W-E-L.
I see it here now.
I think I'm ill-informed to have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I don't think.
I need to research it one way or another, look for it. Vote.
Especially since there's only one candidate, I think that's fine if we choose to abstain from voting.
Need that in form of motion, Rob?
No, we're just gonna abstain.
Not gonna do nothing.
Besides the fact. Surplus items. There was a list of surplus items from the Lincoln Building that we need to approve. Chairs and whatnot. Did everyone get a chance to look at that list?
Yes, I did.
Did have Kara take a look at it as well. You know, anything over above 100, you have to approve. Really all the items on here are less than $100. You know, the pianos were the big question. You know, do you sell those for more than 100? I think we'll be lucky.
Get them
Take them out. If we can take them out for $75. My idea would be to price the things, you know, to go. And, you know, halfway through the sale, if they're still there, I would almost put, you know, $1 on them and hope to get out the door.
And just sell them locally.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
a local yard sale.
It's on Friday.
All right, I would entertain a motion to accept the surplus items as presented. I'll just say so moved.
So moved, yeah.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All right.
Sorry.
Moved by Joe, seconded by Randy. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Suicide prevention plan, which is informative for us. Did anyone have any questions or comments on that?
Megan, you want to say anything about that?
So that's Senate Bill 52 passed. It's also called Addie's Law. It's the same thing. And it just is that schools need to have a plan for prevention, intervention, and prevention. It's a living, breathing document. In fact, a team of us are headed over to Ontario next week to get some additional training. And so there's, I put at the top an updated date that just got added, just so that you guys are aware that it's kind of ever changing. It will go up on our district webpage. I have it on my calendar to put it up tomorrow, just so families know what we're doing.
Make sure to spell check it.
Okay. Thank you.
Looks like there's some really good relationships working together on that. I thought.
Yeah, no, we work really hard with the ESD to put it together. And it's for all kids, Harney County, so the same plan is being used across the county, all the middle schools, training and everything like that. And we're excited to get some of our team members trained too. You know, like kids and looking out for warning signs for kids who are having a hard time.
Any other questions on that? Next agenda items are board policies. They're first reads, so we don't need to take action. I would recommend taking action tonight, but if there are any of those policies that anyone read that they would like more information on next time, have concerns about language, it's really helpful getting that little update, the legislative update that explains why they are being changed.
Right, so I included in your packet the summary. I think you sent those and I closed the whole packet. So I included one that I'm not recommending to you as well, just because they were in your packet. I think as a school board, you want to be up on those anyway. You know, the one down the list there, under the public comment, there's an AR on there that's, we already have a slip of paper that we fill out there. That all it really was a fancier version of that small comment thing. We really think we need any fancier than that. The one on educational equity, it's an optional policy. They're actually going to come out with a revision of another equity policy that we already have in place, and it just didn't make any sense to me to add this one to the mix. You know, if you read through it, you think, oh, we really should have that one too. Great, but I just don't think it is necessary for a district to have. And the one that you know, some districts will probably put it in, and some won't. I just don't think. From my perspective, don't think we need it in. There's the firearms prohibited one. Basically, school district right now, concealed weapons are actually permitted in schools. You have a concealed weapon. This policy would basically says no. That was the law that passed over the last session. It said if that districts had that ability to keep concealed weapons and holders out of the districts. I just place in our county.
One that I will have questions on next time had to do with the bidding requirements and the ORS around it, just because we've talked about trying to do new construction on facilities or renovations, and we have local contractors, but you have to put it out to bid. So if we can, we're ready to talk about that a little bit and see what it can do. But other than that, there are no questions. We can just wait till our second reading. Are there any board requests or reports or anything else? We go to the order. One thing that I did want to bring up, Mr. Quick sent us the email about the guidance, I guess the guidance has been sent out to the state concerning student vaccinations. And I found it inappropriate for them to send that out. But I also feel like from my perspective and for our community, I don't think it's appropriate for our school to be pushing or hosting vaccinations or of any sort. I just don't think that's an educational organization's role. And so I wanted to see if anyone else had thoughts about that so we can make sure our district guidance is in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. It's not our place, and I'm not in favor of pushing it. Or, I mean, yeah, I'm not in favor of the school being involved in any vaccination efforts for children. No. I feel the same way.
Yeah, and I did send an email out, and those parents probably got it. Basically, said we offered Slater Road as a vaccination site Friday, because we do have parents that They do want that, and so we're not saying we have to get a vaccination, it's just an option for parents, and we just have a really good relationship with our local public health authority, and we wanted to foster that relationship down the road, so I just put it out there as a good working partnership together, that if they want to use our facilities. We don't have any of our staff members there, other than to open the door.
Nothing said about. We don't have, we're just.
It's completely optional, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have a middle of the road stance on it and not push one way or the other, and let people choose what they want to do.
I don't feel comfortable hosting, but if they're using our facilities just as a facility because of the relationship with public health. But I hope that going forward, we'll apply those things as liberally as possible, because I know they had a whole pile of resources for what we needed, what schools are encouraged to do in terms of vaccinations for students. And I really think it's best for us to stay out of it if we can.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, my stance on this is the same as this bill at all. It's a personal choice and should not be. We should share no role in encouraging or discouraging, because it's a personal decision between you and your family. So.
Yeah, I felt the same way. When I had to get saying there that they highly encourage me as a superintendent to encourage. I was like, I just didn't find that to be my role.
No.
Thank you.
So.
Well, if there's nothing else, meeting's adjourned. See you in January. Well,
Merry Christmas.
I had everyone tell me that email and I never got it. I kept looking. But I'll be there next week.
Yeah.